Ambassador, when you look at the G7 and actually what this means as a premise for NATO, it does mean, it felt like America was back to what we were used to pre-President Trump, but actually tensions still remain.
Well, I think that the G7 was the first step of President Biden demonstrating very visibly his recommitment to the multilateral institutions, such as the G7, such as NATO, such as the EU, whom we meet with tomorrow, and his willingness and openness to work with allies to engage on the big issues of COVID, climate, and China, as people have said. And I think in that sense, the meeting was a great success. Of course, there are divergences. There are even just those clips you showed of the different leaders describing dealing with China. There are some nuances to be detected there. But I think the most important takeaway is indeed a renewed sense of commitment amongst the allies to try and address these different issues together.
Ambassador, what exactly are you expecting from NATO? So if you look at the G7, it seemed that there was a pretty united front in how to deal with China. Will they be even tougher on Russia?
Well, I think, again, the big message is that the U.S. is back, fully committed to NATO. Let's be very honest. President Trump's mandate left people wondering whether you could count on the U.S. in NATO. President Biden is here to emphasize that we can and that this is going to be a huge boost for the alliance. And yes, I think they will address the issue of Russia, especially in view of President Putin's meeting with Biden's meeting with President Putin on Wednesday, and they will also address, I think, China, and they will address the future development of NATO strategy towards the 2030 objective. And I'm sure they will also talk about the issue of spending and defense spending and whether Europeans do enough, which I think President Biden will still pass the same message as President Trump. We need you to do more.
But Ambassador, what comes after President Biden? So I know it's early days, given he's only become president in January. But do people back in the U.S. watch his every move with allies, watch his every move with China, to then decide whether they want Trump back or not?
Well, I think it's clear that the political situation in the U.S. is very finely balanced. Let's be honest. President Biden won, but he did not. President Trump also did very. Sorry. Yes. So the situation in the United States is very finely balanced. And we could see a change in 2022 in the midterms, or even in 2024. I think the voters of America honestly will be looking more to how the president manages domestic issues, their day-to-day bread and butter issues. But the fact that he is on the world stage, reasserting American leadership, reasserting the alliances, will, I think, add to his image and his domestic strength in the U.S. But he will have to demonstrate that all of this ends up with better outcomes for the American middle class than would be the case otherwise. And that's the key task he has going into the midterms and indeed into the presidential in 2024.
Ambassador, given what we've seen from Russia and Vladimir Putin over the last 5 to 6 years, how should President Biden deal with Russia when they meet, the two presidents meet in Geneva on Wednesday?
Well, it's going to be a difficult meeting, I imagine. President Biden says he wants a stable and predictable relationship. I'm not sure that President Putin does stability or predictability. I think he delights in throwing people off course. And there will be quite a lot of contentious issues, whether that's the human rights or allegations of Russian interference in domestic American politics. So both men are going to have to navigate the differences and try somehow to establish a relationship that will enable them to work together in the coming years. So it's a challenging meeting for President Biden. He'll have to calibrate it very carefully, but he will go to Moscow or to Geneva with a very strong backing from the allies in the G7, in the NATO meetings today, and in meetings with the EU tomorrow. So the choreography of this trip has been very carefully planned, and I'm sure he has a good idea of how he wants to handle the meeting. But it won't be easy because President Putin is a formidable political operator, as we know, and he will have his own agenda.
Ambassador, thanks so much. Ambassador David O'Sullivan there, the former EU ambassador to the U.S.